The crystalline spires of the draconian palace gleamed under 3 moons, casting prismatic shadows across the imperial gardens. Princess Seraphina flexed her azure wings, each scale shimmering with the opalescent glow unique to the royal bloodline. At 20 cycles old, she was considered young by dragon standards, though her intellect and diplomatic skills had already earned respect across the empire. Tonight, however, respect was the last thing on her mind. "Your Highness, the Grand Council awaits your presence." The voice of Keeper Dravos, her appointed guardian, echoed through the garden's archways. Seraphina pretended not to hear. She coiled her serpentine body around a flowering moonvine, inhaling its sweet fragrance. The council wanted to discuss her impending betrothal to Prince Thornix of the Western Territories, a match that would unite 2 powerful dragon houses. Political necessity, they called it. A prison sentence, she thought. Her golden eyes caught movement near the garden's edge, beyond the shimmer of the protective barrier. Something small. Something that didn't belong. Curiosity overrode caution. Seraphina shifted into her smaller form, a technique young dragons learned for navigating spaces not built for their full majesty. In this shape, she stood roughly the height of 2 humans, her wings folding neatly against her back, her features more refined but unmistakably draconian. The barrier recognized her royal essence and parted like silk curtains. What she found on the other side made her freeze. A human male lay unconscious among the luminescent ferns, his brown hair matted with blood from a wound on his temple. His clothing was torn, the fabric unfamiliar and primitive by draconian standards. But what truly caught her attention was the delicate sketching device clutched in his hand and the scattered papers around him, each filled with breathtaking illustrations of her world. Seraphina had seen humans before, but only from a distance during diplomatic ceremonies. They were considered a young species, barely worthy of notice. Their lifespans were tragically brief, their technology laughable compared to draconian achievements. The Empire tolerated them because their home planet contained resources useful for certain manufacturing processes, nothing more, yet this human had somehow breached the most secure location in the capital city. And his drawings captured details that even draconian artists struggled to render. "Fascinating," she whispered, kneeling beside him. Her clawed hand hesitated above his chest, feeling the rapid flutter of his heartbeat. So fragile. So temporary. The sound of armored footsteps made her decision for her. Palace guards were approaching, no doubt searching for the intruder. If they found him, he would be executed immediately. Trespassing on imperial grounds carried no lesser sentence. Seraphina made a choice that would alter the course of 2 species. She wrapped her wings around the human and herself, activating the concealment field built into her royal adornments. The world outside became a blur of shapes and sounds as she lifted them both and flew deeper into the garden's forbidden sections, places where even guards dared not venture without express permission. The Sanctuary of First Bloom, as it was called, housed the oldest living things in the capital. Trees that had witnessed the rise of the dragon civilization itself, their trunks wider than buildings, their branches creating canopies that blocked out the sky. Seraphina had discovered a hollow within one such tree during her rebellious youth, a secret place she retreated to when royal life became suffocating. She laid the human on a bed of soft moss inside the hollow, examining his injury more closely. The wound was superficial but needed treatment. From a hidden cache, she retrieved medical supplies she had stockpiled over the years, a precaution against her own adventures going wrong. As she cleaned the wound with luminescent water from a nearby spring, the human stirred, his eyes opened slowly, revealing an unusual shade of green, like the deep forests of the southern continents. Those eyes widened as they focused on her face, taking in her scaled features, her golden irises, the small horns that curved from her temples. "Please don't scream," Seraphina said softly in the common galactic tongue. "I won't hurt you." To her surprise, he didn't scream. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he stared at her with an expression she couldn't quite identify. Wonder, perhaps. Or terror masked by shock. "Am I dead?" His voice was hoarse but steady. "Because if the afterlife has dragons, I have so many questions." Despite the gravity of the situation, Serafina found herself smiling. Very much alive. Though you came remarkably close to the alternative. How did you get past the barriers? The human tried to sit up, winced, and settled for propping himself on his elbows. My name is Owen. Owen Fletcher. And I didn't mean to trespass. I was documenting the native flora near the city perimeter for the human research colony when something went wrong with my equipment. There was a surge, a bright light, and then I woke up in what I thought was paradise. Until I realized I was somewhere I absolutely shouldn't be. The barrier must have malfunctioned during the solar storm, Serafina mused. It happens once every 50 cycles. You were extraordinarily unlucky. Or extraordinarily lucky, Owen countered, his gaze drifting around the hollow. I'm alive and currently hiding in a magic tree with a dragon princess. Sorry, I'm assuming you're a princess. The crown kind of gave it away. Serafina touched the delicate circlet woven into her horns, having forgotten she wore it. Your assumption is correct. I am Princess Serafina, third of her name, heir to the sapphire throne. Third heir, so not directly in line? Second now. My eldest brother died in the border wars. My sister rules the eastern provinces. The old grief flickered through her, quickly suppressed. And you seem remarkably calm for someone who just learned he's conversing with royalty that could incinerate him with a thought. Owen's expression turned thoughtful. I've spent 3 years studying your culture from a distance, sketching your architecture, analyzing your social structures. Do you know what I learned? Dragons value courage and honesty above all else. Panicking won't save me. But perhaps treating you like a person instead of a monster might. Something warm bloomed in Serafina's chest, an unfamiliar sensation. In all her years, no one had spoken to her quite like this. Courtiers groveled. Suitors postured. Advisors lectured. But this human, this Owen, looked at her like she was simply another being worthy of respect. You're either very wise or very foolish, she said. Both, usually at the same time. Owen managed a weak smile. Listen, I know I'm in serious trouble. But before your guards turn me into a charcoal sketch, can I ask you something? You may ask. Why did you save me? Serafina considered the question. The honest answer felt too vulnerable to speak aloud. Because I'm tired of being a symbol instead of a person. Because I saw someone who looked at my world with genuine appreciation instead of calculated interest. Because for one moment, I wanted to choose something for myself, instead, she said, because those drawings you made deserve to be finished. It would be a waste to let such talent perish. Owen studied her face, and she had the uncomfortable feeling he saw through her deflection. Then I suppose I should finish them. For the sake of art. And because staying alive is generally preferable to the alternative, Serafina added dryly. That too. The sound of distant voices reminded them both that Owen's presence remained a dangerous secret. Serafina's mind raced through possibilities. She couldn't simply release him back to the human colony. The guards would intercept him before he reached the perimeter. Keeping him hidden indefinitely was impossible. Eventually, someone would discover her sanctuary. I need time to think, she said, rising to her feet. Can you walk? Owen tested his legs, standing with only slight unsteadiness. I've had worse. Once fell off a cliff while sketching a waterfall. Broke 3 ribs and still finished the drawing. Your species' stubbornness is legendary. I assumed it was exaggeration. Nope. We're magnificently stupid that way. Despite everything, Serafina laughed. The sound surprised her, echoing oddly in the confined space. When had she last laughed without calculation, without considering how it would be perceived? Stay here, she commanded, already moving toward the hollow's entrance. I'll return after the council meeting with food and supplies. Touch nothing. Some of these plants are carnivorous. Wait, Owen called as she spread her wings. Thank you. For not letting me die. Serafina looked back at him, this strange human who had stumbled into her world and somehow made it feel less lonely. Thank you for reminding me why I loved this garden in the first place. She launched into the air, leaving Owen hidden among the ancient trees. As she flew back toward the palace, her mind churned with the implications of what she had done. Harboring a human trespasser was treason. If discovered, not even her royal blood would save her from severe punishment, but as the council chamber loomed ahead, filled with dragons who would decide her future without caring about her desires, Serafina felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. The Grand Council chamber stretched like a cathedral of crystal and flame, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadows that flickered with the light of 1,000 fire orbs. Serafina took her designated seat among the semicircle of dragon nobility, each representative adorned with markers of their house and territory. The air tasted of sulfur and ancient power. Elder Magistrate Voranthar, his scales dulled by centuries, fixed his clouded eyes upon her. Princess Serafina, your tardiness disrupts the harmony of our proceedings. My apologies, Elder. I was attending to matters of spiritual contemplation in the gardens. The lie came smoothly, practiced from years of navigating court politics. Contemplation, sneered Counselor Mithraxis, his crimson scales gleaming like fresh blood. While the Empire requires decisive action. The human settlements on our resource territories have expanded beyond acceptable parameters. Their mining operations contaminate sacred grounds. We must respond with force. Serafina's claws dug into the armrests of her throne. Force? We granted them those mining rights through diplomatic agreement. Breaking our word would make us no different than the barbarian clans we defeated centuries ago. Barbarians who understood the only language inferior species comprehend, Mithraxis countered. Power. These humans breed like insects, consume like parasites. In another generation, they'll demand citizenship. Representation. Would you have us share our legacy with creatures that live barely long enough to learn wisdom? Several council members murmured agreement. Serafina felt her inner fire rise, the heat building in her chest. Wisdom? You advocate genocide while preaching wisdom? Their lives may be brief, but that makes their accomplishments more remarkable, not less. They've achieved space travel in a fraction of the time it took our ancestors. Using technology stolen or traded from superior species, another counselor interjected. Adapted, Serafina corrected sharply. They adapt, improvise, create solutions we would never consider because we assume our way is the only way. That's not weakness. That's innovation. Voranthar raised a clawed hand, silencing the growing argument. The princess raises valid points. However, the immediate concern is not philosophy but practicality. The humans have discovered deposits of starfire crystal beneath their colony. Such resources cannot be left in primitive hands. Starfire crystal, the rarest substance in known space. It powered everything from spacecraft to medical technology. A deposit large enough to support a colony would be worth more than entire planets. Then we negotiate, Serafina insisted. Offer them technology exchanges, trade agreements. Show them that cooperation benefits both species more than conflict. Negotiate? Mithraxis laughed, a sound like grinding stone. With pets? Princess, your youth shows. These creatures lack the capacity for true partnership. They see only their immediate needs, their brief little lives. We think in centuries. They think in decades. There is no common ground. Serafina thought of Owen, hiding in her sanctuary, his eyes filled with wonder at her world, his drawings capturing beauty that even draconian artists missed. He had looked at her not as a terrifying monster or a distant ruler, but as a person. In one conversation, he had shown more genuine interest in her thoughts than most of the council had in years. Perhaps the problem isn't their capacity, she said quietly. Perhaps it's our willingness to see them as capable. The silence that followed was heavy with judgment. Voranthar's expression remained neutral, but she caught the slight narrowing of his eyes. Dangerous territory. Advocating too strongly for humans would raise suspicions about her loyalties. The princess speaks from compassion, a noble trait, Voranthar said carefully. But compassion without wisdom is merely sentiment. We will table the military response for now. Instead, Princess Seraphina, you will lead a diplomatic envoy to the human colony. Assess their capabilities, their intentions regarding the Starfire deposits. Report back within 2 weeks. The announcement hit like a physical blow. Leave the capital? Travel to the human settlement? With Owen hidden in her garden? I am honored by your trust, Elder, but surely someone with more diplomatic experience would be better suited. Your future husband, Prince Thornyx, will accompany you, Voranthar continued as if she hadn't spoken. Consider it an opportunity to build partnership before your formal bonding ceremony. The Council expects a thorough report on both the human situation and your compatibility with your intended trap. This was a trap wrapped in an honor. They wanted to remove her from the capital, cement her engagement to Thornyx, and probably hoped the humans would provide some excuse for aggressive action. She could refuse, but that would only increase scrutiny on her activities. As the Council commands, she said, bowing her head. The meeting continued for another hour, discussing trade routes and territorial disputes that felt meaningless compared to the secret human hiding in her garden. When finally dismissed, Seraphina flew directly back to the sanctuary of First Bloom, her mind racing with complications. Owen was exactly where she had left him, though he had clearly not heeded her warning about touching things. He sat surrounded by bioluminescent flowers, sketching them by their own light, completely absorbed in his work. Those flowers secrete a neurotoxin that causes temporary paralysis, Seraphina said by way of greeting. Owen looked up, utterly unconcerned. Only if you crush them. I've been very gentle. Also, they're absolutely magnificent. The way they pulse in rhythm with each other, it's like they're communicating. Are they communicating? Yes. They share resources and warn each other of threats through chemical signals in their roots. But that's not important right now. We have a serious problem. She explained the Council's decision, watching Owen's expression shift from curiosity to concern as he understood the implications. So you're leaving in 2 weeks, he summarized. Which means I have 2 weeks to get out of here before you go and someone else discovers me. You can't leave. The palace is on high alert after the barrier malfunction. Every exit is monitored. They're searching for the cause of the disturbance. So I'm stuck here. In a magic tree. For 2 weeks. Owen ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Seraphina was beginning to recognize as his response to stress. With a dragon princess who's supposed to be bonding with her future husband instead of hiding a human trespasser. This is fine. Everything is fine. Your sarcasm is unhelpful. It's a coping mechanism. I have many flaws. He looked at her directly, those green eyes serious. Seraphina, you should turn me in. Whatever punishment I face, it's better than you risking treason charges for harboring me. The suggestion made her anger flare, literally. Small wisps of smoke escaped her nostrils. Absolutely not. I made a choice to save you. I don't regret it. Even though it's complicating your life exponentially. Especially because of that. The admission came before she could stop it. My life has been nothing but complications orchestrated by others. This complication, at least, is mine. Owen studied her for a long moment. You really don't want to marry this Prince Thornyx, do you? Is it that obvious? You tensed up when you said his name. Also, you breathed a small jet of fire. That seemed telling. Despite everything, Seraphina smiled. He's not cruel, just ambitious and boring. He sees me as a political asset, nothing more. Our marriage will unite territories and produce heirs of combined bloodlines. Very practical. Very strategic. Very miserable, Owen added softly. Dragons don't marry for happiness. We marry for the good of the Empire. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Owen set down his sketching device. For what it's worth, I think you deserve someone who sees you as more than a political asset. The warmth in Serafina's chest returned, stronger this time. She wanted to ask what he saw when he looked at her, but fear held her tongue. Instead, she retrieved the supplies she had hidden earlier. Food, water, medical materials. I'll visit when I can, she said. But with preparations for the diplomatic mission, it may be difficult. Can you survive here alone? I've camped in worse conditions. Though usually without the threat of execution hanging over my head. That's new. Owen accepted the supplies, his fingers briefly brushing against her scaled hand. Neither of them pulled away immediately. Tell me about your world, Serafina said impulsively. Your real world, not the sanitized reports in our diplomatic files. So Owen talked. He described Earth, its vast oceans and diverse ecosystems, the way seasons changed, the concept of rain that fell from the sky instead of being generated by controlled weather systems. He talked about his family, his 2 younger siblings, how he had left home to pursue art despite his father's wishes that he become an engineer. Sounds familiar, Serafina murmured. Parents with plans that don't match your dreams. Except your parents can breathe fire and rule an empire, so the stakes are slightly higher. Owen paused. Can I draw you? I've sketched your gardens, your architecture, but I'd like to capture something more personal. If that's not offensive. Draw me how? As you are right now. Not the princess in ceremonial armor, not the diplomatic figure, just you, sitting here in your secret garden, looking like you're thinking about 1,000 things at once. No one had ever asked to portray her that way. Every official portrait showed her in full regalia, majestic and distant. The idea of being seen as simply herself was both terrifying and thrilling. All right, she agreed. Owen worked in comfortable silence, his hands moving across the paper with practiced confidence. Serafina watched him work, noting the way his expression softened when he was focused, how he occasionally bit his lower lip in concentration. So different from the rigid formality of dragon courtship rituals. Can I ask you something personal? Owen said, not looking up from his drawing. You're already drawing me in my secret sanctuary. I think we're past formalities. Why did you really save me? The truth this time. Serafina considered lying again, but something about the moment, the privacy of the hollow, the genuine curiosity in his voice, made her want to be honest. Because when you look at my world, you see beauty worth preserving. When my people look at your world, we see resources worth exploiting. I saved you because I wanted to believe that maybe we're wrong. That maybe there's more to humanity than we've allowed ourselves to see. Owen finally looked up from his sketch, his expression intense. And what do you see? I see someone brave enough to risk everything for art. Someone who treats me like a person instead of a title. Someone who makes me remember why I fell in love with these gardens before duty turned them into just another obligation. She paused. I see a friend. Is that foolish? No, Owen said softly. That's probably the sanest thing either of us has said since we met. He turned the sketch pad toward her. The image took her breath away. He had captured her mid-thought, her expression pensive but not cold, vulnerable but not weak. She looked real in a way no formal portrait had ever achieved. I look almost human in this, she whispered. You look like yourself. That's all I was trying to show. A distant bell tolled, marking the evening hour. Serafina reluctantly rose to her feet. I have to return. The betrothal dinner with Thornix is tonight. Missing it would cause questions I can't answer. Good luck. Try not to set him on fire, even if he deserves it. I make no promises. At the hollow's entrance, she turned back. Owen? Thank you for seeing me. Anytime, princess. As she flew back toward the palace, Seraphina realized with startling clarity that 2 weeks suddenly felt far too short and infinitely too long. The human hiding in her garden had become something dangerous, something she couldn't quite name but couldn't bear to lose. The diplomatic mission loomed ahead. Prince Thornyx awaited. The council watched. But for the first time in her life, Seraphina had something that was wholly hers, a secret that made her feel alive instead of merely existing. Whatever came next, she would face it. But first, she had to survive dinner with a dragon she was supposed to marry while her thoughts remained with a human she was supposed to forget. Prince Thornyx embodied everything draconian society considered ideal. His obsidian scales reflected light like polished armor, each movement calculated for maximum impact. His horns curved in perfect symmetry, adorned with precious metals that announced his wealth. When he spoke, his voice carried the resonance of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. Seraphina found him utterly exhausting. The human territories represent a strategic opportunity, Thornyx explained over the formal dinner, gesturing with a claw for emphasis. Once we complete our bonding ceremony, I propose we restructure their governance entirely. Replace their elected councils with draconian overseers. Efficiency would increase significantly. They might object to being ruled by a species that considers them inferior, Seraphina said mildly, picking at her fire-roasted meat. Their objections are irrelevant. They lack the perspective to understand what's best for them. We would be doing them a service, really, guiding them towards civilization. Seraphina imagined Owen's reaction to being told he needed guidance towards civilization. The mental image of his incredulous expression made her suppress a smile. You find subjugation amusing, my betrothed? Thornyx's tone sharpened. I find your certainty refreshing, she lied smoothly. Though I wonder if partnership might yield better results than domination. United interests create more stable alliances than imposed rule. Thornyx leaned back, studying her with calculating eyes. The council warned me you had developed progressive tendencies. They assured me it was merely youthful idealism that would fade with proper guidance. Proper guidance meaning you would educate me on correct thinking? Someone must. Your mother, rest her flames, was too lenient with you. Allowed too much freedom, too many questions. A royal's duty is to lead, not to question the foundations of our society. Seraphina's inner fire surged dangerously hot. She forced herself to breathe slowly, controlling the impulse to remind Thornyx that her mother had been a brilliant strategist whose diplomatic skills had prevented 3 wars. But losing her temper would only prove his point about her needing guidance. The diplomatic mission in 2 weeks, she said, changing the subject. What are your objectives beyond observing the human colony? Assessment of military vulnerabilities, identification of key infrastructure, evaluation of resource extraction methods. Standard reconnaissance disguised as diplomacy. By the time we return, we'll know exactly how to dismantle their operation if they refuse to cooperate regarding the Starfire deposits. And if I disagree with dismantling their colony? Thornyx reached across the table, his scaled hand covering hers in what was probably meant as a reassuring gesture. It felt like a trap closing. My dear Seraphina, that's why we make an excellent match. You provide the compassionate voice that keeps the council comfortable, while I handle the practical necessities they're too diplomatic to demand openly. You'll learn to appreciate the arrangement. She pulled her hand away gently. I'm not a decoration for your political ambitions, Thornyx. Of course not. You're the key to uniting the northern and southern territories, securing trade routes through the eastern provinces, and producing heirs with combined royal bloodlines strong enough to rule unchallenged for generations. Your role is far more important than mere decoration. The sad part was that Thornyx genuinely believed he was complimenting her. In his worldview, reducing her to genetic potential and political currency was acknowledging her value. I need air, Seraphina announced, rising from the table. The evening has been enlightening. We have several more courses to discuss the details of the ceremony. Then you'll have to discuss them without me. Royal prerogative. She swept from the dining hall before he could object, ignoring the disapproving stares of the servants. Her wings carried her back to the sanctuary before conscious thought directed them there. Owen was awake, sitting near the entrance of the hollow, staring up at the 3 moons visible through gaps in the canopy. "That bad?" he asked as she landed. "How did you know?" "You're literally smoking. Like, actual smoke is coming off your scales." Seemed like a clue. Serafina looked down and realized he was right. Her emotional control had slipped. The dinner was enlightening. "I learned that my future husband views me as a combination breeding program and diplomatic prop." Yikes. That's even worse than I imagined, and I was imagining pretty bad. He's not evil, just blind. He truly believes he's offering me partnership while describing how he'll override every decision I make for our mutual benefit. She transformed to her smaller form and sat beside Owen, suddenly exhausted. "Tell me honestly, is your species this backwards about relationships?" "Some people are, sure. But most of us figured out that treating partners like equals works better than the whole ownership approach. Took us a while though. We had some pretty terrible traditions we had to outgrow." "How did you outgrow them?" "People stood up. Said no to things that were wrong, even when it was dangerous or difficult. Changed minds one conversation at a time until enough people agreed that the old ways needed to die." Owen glanced at her. "You could say no to an imperial marriage arrangement? That's not how our society works." "Then maybe your society needs people willing to make it work differently." The simplicity of the statement made it sound easy. Serafina knew the reality was far more complex. Refusing the marriage would mean losing her title, her position, possibly her family's support. It would mean facing the council's wrath, being branded as rebellious, potentially undermining everything her mother had built. But sitting here with Owen, being seen and heard without judgment, Serafina felt something shift inside her. "If I refuse the marriage, they'll find another match. Someone more compliant, easier to control. The progressive policies I've been slowly implementing would be reversed. The human colonies would lose their most sympathetic voice in the council. So you're sacrificing yourself for the greater good. That's what royalty does." Owen was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "My sister once told me something when I was trying to decide whether to pursue art or follow our father's plans. She said that sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is live authentically. Because when you pretend to be something you're not just lying to yourself. You're lying to everyone who might have found courage in your truth." "Your sister sounds wise." "She's 12 and way smarter than me." Owen pulled out his sketch pad. "Can I show you something?" He flipped through pages of drawings from his time in the sanctuary. The gardens in various lights, the bioluminescent flowers, the massive trees. Then he reached a section that made Serafina's breath catch. They were drawings of her, dozens of them. Not the formal pose from earlier, but candid moments he must have captured when she visited. Her expression thoughtful as she explained draconian customs. Her smile when he made a joke. Her eyes reflecting firelight, looking hopeful despite everything. "This is how I see you," Owen said quietly. "Not as a princess or a political figure, but as someone extraordinary trying to navigate an impossible situation. Someone strong enough to save a stranger, kind enough to keep him safe, brave enough to question the world she was born into. I'm not that person. I'm about to marry someone I don't love, lead a diplomatic mission designed to justify destroying your people's colony, and pretend it's all for the greater good. You're also the person who's kept me alive when turning me in would have been easier. Who listens when I talk about my world like it matters. Who sits here questioning everything instead of blindly accepting it." Owen met her eyes directly. You get to decide who you are, Seraphina. Not the council, not Thornix, not even your responsibilities. You. The word struck something deep inside her, a truth she had been avoiding for years. Every choice she made from a sense of duty was still a choice. She could keep choosing the path laid out for her, or she could choose something different. If I refuse the marriage, if I advocate for real partnership with humanity, the council will see it as treason, she said slowly. They might strip my title. Exile me. Would that be worse than spending your life as someone else's political tool? Seraphina looked at the drawings again, seeing herself through Owen's eyes. Strong. Kind. Brave. Qualities she wanted to embody instead of merely pretending to possess. No, she admitted. It wouldn't be worse. It would be terrifying and difficult, but it wouldn't be worse. Then what are you going to do? The answer crystallized with sudden clarity. I'm going to the human colony as planned. But instead of gathering intelligence for an invasion, I'm going to build a real alliance. Show both our species that cooperation is possible. And when I return, I'm going to tell the council I won't marry Thornix. That I won't be party to their plans for your people. They won't accept that peacefully. Probably not. But my mother didn't raise me to take the easy path. She raised me to do what was right. Seraphina stood, her decision made. I need to get you to the human colony before I leave. If I'm going to advocate for partnership, I should probably not be hiding evidence of kidnapping. Owen laughed. Technically, you saved me. That's the opposite of kidnapping. I don't think the council would appreciate the distinction. She began calculating logistics. The diplomatic transport leaves in 2 weeks. I can't smuggle you aboard without questions. But there's an old maintenance tunnel that connects the palace to the outer perimeter. It hasn't been used in decades, but it should still be passable. You're planning a prison break. For me. While engaged to someone else and preparing for a diplomatic mission that could start a war. When you list it like that, it sounds reckless. That's because it is reckless. Also brave and kind and exactly the kind of thing I hoped you'd do. Owen packed his sketching supplies. When do we leave? 3 nights from now. There's a shift change in the guard rotation that creates a 15-minute window. If we time it perfectly, we can get you to the tunnel entrance unnoticed. They spent the next 2 hours planning, working out details and contingencies. As the first moon began to set, Seraphina prepared to return to the palace once more. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of physical danger, but of disappointing everyone who expects me to follow tradition. Those people don't know you like I do. Owen smiled. And I think you're going to be amazing. The warmth in his voice, the absolute confidence, gave Seraphina courage she hadn't known she possessed. For the first time in her life, someone believed in her choices instead of her duty. When this is over, when I've helped establish real peace between our species, will you teach me more about your world? She asked. I'll teach you everything. Starting with Earth Pizza, which is definitely humanity's greatest achievement. Greater than space travel? Way greater. You'll understand when you try it. Seraphina laughed, the sound echoing through the ancient trees. Whatever consequences awaited her decisions, whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them as herself. Not as the compliant princess the council expected, not as Thornix's political partner, but as someone choosing her own path. 3 nights until Owen's escape. 2 weeks until the diplomatic mission. And after that, a confrontation with the council that would determine not just her future, but the future of human and dragon relations across the empire. As she flew back toward the palace, Seraphina felt something she had not experienced in years, excitement about what came next. The path ahead was uncertain and dangerous, but it was finally, truly hers. And somehow, a human artist hiding in her garden had given her the courage to walk it.